The Council of Seven Reaches convened in what we optimistically called the War Room, though frankly calling it a war room implied we had any idea how to fight a war. We didn't. The Velkari Swarm had been obliterating star systems for 3 standard cycles now, and our best military strategists had produced exactly 0 viable solutions. Well, technically they'd produced 14 solutions, but 13 involved strategic retreat, and the 14th was essentially a very elaborate form of begging. I'm Kesix, by the way. Junior diplomat. Third circle, which is a fancy way of saying I took notes while important people argued. My species. The Thren prided ourselves on reason, logic, and approximately 6,000 years of uninterrupted philosophical advancement. We'd written poetry that could make stars weep, or so we claimed. We'd never actually tested it on stars. Seemed rude. The projections are clear, announced Darwin, his head tentacles quivering with what I recognized as barely suppressed panic. The swarm will reach the Thren homeworld in 47 days. Our defensive fleet will last approximately... He paused, checking his data slate. 11 minutes. 11 minutes? Squeaked Ambassador Triel, her exoskeleton clicking nervously. Last week you said 14. They adapted, Vin said flatly. They always adapt. The Velkari weren't just conquering the galaxy. They were consuming it. Biomechanical horrors that learned from every battle, evolved past every weapon we threw at them, and apparently never bothered with anything as wasteful as diplomacy. We'd tried talking to them exactly once. They'd responded by eating the entire delegation and then using the ambassador's ship designs to build better warships. That was the Velkari way. See, consume, improve, repeat. Perhaps, ventured Counselor Nex, stroking his crystalline beard, if we offered them the outer colonies, bought ourselves time to evacuate core worlds. We tried that, I reminded him, flipping through my notes. They took the colonies and accelerated their timeline. Apparently genocide makes them hungry, not satisfied. Nex slumped in his hoverchair. Right. Yes. I'd forgotten. That was the problem with the Council. We'd forgotten what real conflict looked like. Our last actual war had been 3,000 years ago, and it had ended when both sides agreed that fighting was terribly inefficient and decided to write strongly worded essays at each other instead. We'd built an entire civilization on the premise that reason would always prevail. The Velkari had never read our premise. There is, Vin said slowly, one option we haven't explored. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. We all knew what he was going to say. We'd all been avoiding saying it. Absolutely not, snapped Counselor Mira, her scales flushing an angry purple. We are not that desperate, aren't we? Vin spread his appendages in a gesture of resignation. In 47 days our civilization ends. Everything we have built, every line of poetry, every philosophical treatise, every mathematical proof, gone, fed to the swarm, unless we are willing to set aside our pride and ask for help. From them? Mira's voice dripped with disgust. From humans? Yes. Humans. The galaxy's favorite cautionary tale about evolution gone wrong. When humanity had burst onto the interstellar scene 70 years ago, we'd all assumed they were an elaborate prank. Surely no species could actually be that aggressive, that irrational, that prone to solving problems by hitting them repeatedly with increasingly large objects. We were wrong. They were absolutely that species. Humans had discovered faster than light travel by accident while testing weapons in their own star system. Their first diplomatic contact had gone poorly because their translator had mixed up the words for greetings and your mother. They'd nearly started 3 wars in their first month of galactic contact, mostly through sheer cultural incompetence. But here's the thing about humans that made them simultaneously fascinating and terrifying. They were very, very good at war. Not the civilized kind of conflict we remembered from ancient history. Real war. Brutal. Chaotic improvised violence conducted with both cutting-edge technology and, when necessary, rocks. They had a saying, if it's stupid but it works, it isn't stupid. By that logic, their entire military doctrine was genius, because it absolutely worked. The galaxy had learned this the hard way. When the Krillian Empire decided humans looked like easy prey, the Krillians were a proud warrior culture with a 1,000-year military tradition. They'd conquered 40 systems. Humans destroyed their entire fleet in 6 weeks using tactics that violated approximately 200 interstellar warfare conventions. Not because humans were trying to commit war crimes, just because they'd never read the conventions and frankly wouldn't have cared if they had. The Krillian survivors had surrendered unconditionally and now spent their time writing confused academic papers titled things like "Why did they use their medical ship as a ram?" and "The psychological impact of being boarded by warriors who made jokes the entire time." After that, the galactic community had politely but firmly suggested that humans maybe stay in their corner of space. We'd opened trade relations, accepted their embassy, and then tried to pretend they didn't exist. They were barbarians, useful barbarians occasionally, but barbarians nonetheless. And now Praetor Vin was suggesting we ask the barbarians for help. They have no culture, Mira continued her tirade. No respect for intellectual discourse. They resolve disputes with something called trial by combat and think philosophy is boring. They also, Vin said quietly, have never lost a war. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Ambassador Triel spoke up. I have reviewed the human military records. All of them. Every conflict, every battle, every skirmish. Their win rate is... She paused, checking her data. Well, it's either 100% or 97% depending on whether you count their internal conflicts, which they call practice. Practice? Mira looked horrified. They fight each other when they get bored. I added helpfully. It's called sparring and apparently it's a bonding activity. That's barbaric. Yes, Vin agreed. But in 47 days barbarism might be exactly what we need. The vote was closer than I expected. 4 in favor, 3 opposed. Democracy in action. Even as our civilization crumbled, the council authorized me to travel to the human embassy and make the request officially. Why me? Because I was junior enough that if the humans laughed us out of the room it wouldn't be a major diplomatic incident. Also because everyone else was too proud to ask. The human embassy was located in what we designated as the eccentric species quarter of the station, sandwiched between the Glorthian hive mind and a species that communicated entirely through interpretive dance. The humans had apparently requested this location specifically. When asked why, their ambassador had said something about enjoying interesting neighbors. We'd learned not to ask follow-up questions. I approached the embassy door with all the enthusiasm of someone walking toward their own execution. The building itself was an architectural nightmare, all hard angles and aggressive colors where any sensible structure would use gentle curves and soothing tones. There was a flag hanging outside showing stripes and stars in a pattern that seemed designed to give mathematicians headaches. The door opened before I could knock. A human stood there, grinning in that distinctly predatory way they had. Humans were bipedal, which was common enough, but everything else about them screamed apex predator. Forward-facing eyes. Too many teeth. All of them optimized for tearing. Insufficient body armor. They'd evolved on a death world where apparently everything was trying to kill everything else, and they'd responded by becoming the best at killing. This particular human was female, I thought. Their sexual dimorphism was subtle. She had dark skin, darker hair pulled back in a style their military favored, and wore what they called a uniform, which seemed to be just regular clothes but with more pockets and insignia. You must be Kessex, she said in flawless galactic common, though her accent made everything sound vaguely threatening. I'm Captain Lisa Hayes. We have been expecting you. You have? Your council's encrypted transmissions aren't as encrypted as you think. Also, you have got a Velkari Swarm bearing down on you and literally no one else to turn to. She stepped aside, gesturing me in. Come on. Coffee's fresh. The interior of the embassy was somehow worse than the exterior. Humans decorated their spaces with what they called personality, which apparently meant random objects with sentimental values scattered everywhere. There were pictures on the walls showing humans engaged in various activities, many of which looked actively dangerous. One showed a human hanging from a cliff face by their fingertips. Another showed several humans in a boat on what appeared to be volcanic water. They called this fun. Captain Hayes led me to an office and gestured to a chair. I sat, trying not to stare at the weapon casually mounted on her wall. It was some kind of projectile launcher, primitive but effective. There was a small plaque under it that read First Boarding Action, 21D4. Humans kept trophies. Of course they did. So, Hayes said, pouring herself a cup of the dark liquid they called coffee. Let me guess. The swarm's eating your empire, your fleets can't stop them, and you need someone crazy enough to pick a fight with a biomechanical hive mind that adapts to everything. She took a sip. How am I doing? Disturbingly accurate, I admit. It's what we do, Kessex. Humans are pattern recognition machines. We look at a problem, figure out what's probably going to happen, and then punch the problem until a different thing happens instead. She sat down across from me. The question is, what's in it for us? Of course, humans negotiated everything. They had a saying, there's no such thing as a free lunch. I'd spent 3 days trying to figure out what lunch had to do with interstellar politics before giving up. What do you want? I asked. Well, let's see. You have spent 70 years treating us like the embarrassing relatives you only invite to family gatherings when you need someone to move heavy furniture. Your philosophers wrote a 600-page treatise on why humans represent evolution's mistakes. Your kids' entertainment programs portray us as violent simpletons. And now you want us to go fight your war for you. She smiled. I'm thinking we want a lot. My head tentacles drooped. Name your price. Technology sharing. Full access to your scientific databases. A seat on the Council of 7 Reaches, which I guess will become the Council of 8. Mutual Defense Pact. And an apology. An apology. Public. Formal. From the Council. Admitting that maybe, just maybe, you were a tiny bit prejudiced, and humans are actually pretty okay. I ran calculations in my head. What she was asking for was enormous. It would fundamentally reshape galactic power structures. The other species would be furious. The Thren philosophical establishment would have collective heart failure. Done, I said. Hayes raised her eyebrows. Just like that, Captain Hayes, in 47 days my entire species will be extinct. I will trade every byte of data we have, every seat of power, every scrap of pride for a chance to survive. If you can stop the swarm, you can have whatever you want. She studied me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in her expression. The predatory edge softened slightly. You know what, Kessex? I like you. You are practical. We appreciate practical. She stood up. All right, we will do it, but I'm going to level with you about something. What? We are going to save your civilization. We are going to stop the swarm. But the way we do it is going to horrify you. You are going to watch us work and think we are monsters. You are going to question whether extinction might have been preferable to accepting our help. And when it's over, you are going to have to live with the fact that the barbarians saved you. She extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. Can you handle that? I looked at her hand. 5 fingers. No claws, soft skin over a framework of bone. Humans had conquered their death world with these soft, inefficient appendages. They'd beaten the Krellians with them. They'd survived everything their nightmare planet threw at them, and emerged as apex predators. I reached out and grasped her hand. I can handle it. Good. Her grip was gentle, but I could feel the strength in it. Then let's go save your civilization. Fair warning, though, we are going to need to do some things that violate pretty much every warfare convention you people have. The Velkari already violated all of them. No, Kessex. The Velkari violated your conventions. They haven't violated ours yet. Her smile widened. Mostly because our conventions include things like orbital bombardment is fine, and if you can weaponize it, weaponize it. I felt my organs clench in what might have been fear or possibly excitement. What's your plan? First, I need to see what we are working with. Your fleet composition, your weapons technology, your tactical databases. Everything. She moved to her desk and pulled up a holographic display. Second, I need to talk to whoever's in charge of your military. And third, she pulled out a communication device. I need to call home and request what we call a proportional response. What's a proportional response? It means we match the threat level. The Velkari want to eat a civilization? We are going to bring enough firepower to make them choke on it. She started typing rapidly. How many systems has the swarm consumed so far? 17. And how many ships in their fleet? Estimated between 10 and 15,000. But they keep building more from consumed resources. Hayes nodded, still typing. Right. So we will bring 20,000. Maybe 25 to be safe. Humans don't like fair fights. We like overwhelming superiority and enemies who surrender before we have to get creative. You have 25,000 warships. I couldn't keep the shock from my voice. Oh, Kessex. She looked up and her expression was almost pitying. We have a lot more than that. We just don't bring the full fleet unless it's really serious. But a biomechanical swarm trying to eat our new friends. She hit a final key. Yeah, that qualifies as really serious. The holographic display shifted, showing what appeared to be a massive military complex. Ships beyond counting. weapons I couldn't even begin to categorize, and humans swarming over all of it like organized insects. This, Hayes said proudly, is the Third Fleet. They specialize in aggressive negotiations with hostile entities. Their motto is "We tried talking," which is a lie because they definitely didn't try very hard. Admiral Kowalski commands them. He's brilliant, slightly unhinged, and has never met a problem he couldn't solve with applied violence. He sounds terrifying. He is. He's also exactly what you need. She closed the display. Here's what's going to happen. You are going to go back to your council and tell them help is coming. Then you are going to evacuate your core worlds to the furthest systems you can reach, because when this kicks off, it's going to get messy. How messy? She considered. Do you know what scorched earth means? No. It's when you burn everything between you and the enemy so they can't use it. We invented the concept about 6,000 years ago and we have been perfecting it ever since. She walked to the window, looking out at the stars. The Velkari adapt to threats. Right? They learn. They evolve. They overcome. Yes, good. That means they can learn fear. She turned back to me and there was something in her eyes that made my survival instinct scream. We are going to teach them what happens when you threaten a human ally. We are going to make them regret ever hearing about your species. And then, if there are any of them left, we are going to give them a choice. Leave this galaxy and never come back, or we start getting creative. What does creative mean? Captain Hayes smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing I'd seen in my entire life. You ever heard of biological warfare, Kessex? That's illegal under 17 interstellar conventions. For you guys, sure. For us? She shrugged. We never signed those. We also have chemical warfare, psychological warfare, economic warfare, and my personal favorite, what we call cultural warfare, where we teach the enemy's children to question everything their elders believe. She held up a hand. Don't worry, we won't use the really nasty stuff. Probably, unless the swarm refuses to leave peacefully, in which case all bets are off, and they are about to discover why Earth didn't produce philosophers and poets in our early history. We were too busy surviving everything trying to kill us. I stood on shaky limbs. I should return to the council. Yeah, you should. Tell them to expect the Third Fleet in 72 hours. Tell them to clear a defensive perimeter around your core worlds, and Kessex? She walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. It was a gentle gesture, almost friendly. Tell them we are going to win. Humans don't know how to lose. We just occasionally take longer to win than expected. I left the embassy in a daze. 72 hours. In 72 hours, the humans would arrive and everything would change. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or terrified. Probably both. When I reported to the council, the reactions were exactly what I expected. Mira looked outraged. Vin looked relieved. Trill looked curious. Nex looked like he was already composing his resignation letter. They want a seat on the council? Mira's scales had gone full purple. The audacity. They are going to save our civilization, I pointed out. We don't know that yet. No, agreed Praetor Ven. But in 44 days we will all be dead if they don't try. I say we accept their terms and pray to whatever deities we still believe in that these barbarians know what they are doing. The vote was unanimous this time. Fear has a way of building consensus. 72 hours later, right on schedule, the human Third Fleet arrived. I'd thought I understood scale. I'd seen the great colony ships that carried millions across the stars. I'd witnessed the construction platforms that built entire stations. I'd even seen our own defense fleet assembled in formation, hundreds of ships, working in perfect coordination. None of it prepared me for the human Third Fleet. They arrived in a burst of exotic radiation and impossible mathematics, their faster-than-light drives leaving tears in space-time that would take weeks to heal. 23,000 warships, each one a masterwork of aggressive engineering. They came in formations we had no names for, moving with a precision that suggested either incredible training or some kind of hive mind. Humans, it turned out, had neither. They were just very, very good at coordinated violence. The flagship was called Indomitable, which was apparently a human word meaning refuses to be conquered. It was 5 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that ranged from elegant energy cannons to crude missile ports that seemed designed by someone who'd never heard of subtlety. There were markings along its hull, each one representing a battle won. I counted 47 before giving up. Admiral Kowalski himself contacted the Council within minutes of arrival. He appeared on our screens as older human male, gray hair cropped short, face lined with what their species called experience, and everyone else called evidence of a violent life. He wore a uniform covered in symbols I didn't recognize, each one probably representing some act of regulated mayhem. "Council of 7 Reaches," he said, his voice carrying the rough edges of someone who'd spent too much time shouting orders in combat. "This is Admiral Richard Kowalski, 3rd Fleet, Earth Defense Force. We are here to solve your pest problem." "Admiral," Thren said carefully, "we are grateful for your arrival. When can we discuss strategy?" "Strategy?" Kowalski laughed, a harsh sound. "Counselor, with respect, we don't need to discuss strategy. We need you to get your civilians out of the way while we work. The Velkari Swarm is 41 days from your homeworld. In 40 days they won't exist. How's that for strategy?" Mira couldn't help herself. "You are very confident for someone who's never fought the Swarm." "Ma'am, I have fought 17 species across 40 engagements in my career. Some were tougher than expected. Some folded faster than we planned. But they all had one thing in common." His smile was cold. "They all lost. The Swarm's about to join that list." "They adapt," I said. "Every weapon we use, they learn to counter it." "Good. Adaptation requires time. We are not going to give them time." Kowalski gestured off-screen and the display shifted, showing what I recognized as Swarm territory. "Your people tried to fight them like civilized folks. Measured responses, tactical withdrawals, minimal collateral damage. That's your mistake. You can't be civilized with an enemy that wants to eat you." "Then what do you propose?" asked Thren. "Total warfare. We are going to hit every Swarm world simultaneously. We are going to destroy their resource bases, eliminate their manufacturing capability, and kill so many of them so fast that they don't have time to adapt. We call it shock and awe, and it's been human doctrine since before we had spaceflight." He pulled up tactical displays. "We have identified 32 Swarm concentrations. In 6 hours, all 32 are going to experience what we call a maximum effort strike. Any questions?" The Council sat in stunned silence. "Good," Kowalski continued. "Captain Hayes tells me you have agreed to our terms. Technology sharing begins immediately. We will need your sensor data, your analysis of Swarm biology, and anything else you have got. In exchange, you get to watch the Earth Defense Force do what we do best." He leaned forward. "Counselors, you are about to witness something your civilization hasn't seen in 3,000 years. Real war. It's going to be loud, messy, and probably shocking. But when it's over, you will be safe. We promise you that." The transmission ended. I looked at Thren. "Are we sure about this?" "No," he admitted. "But we are out of options and out of time. The humans are our last hope. What if they fail? Then we die fighting beside barbarians instead of dying alone. I can live with that." He paused. "Well, I can die with that." 6 hours later, the 3rd Fleet moved into attack formation. I watched from the Council observation deck as 23,000 human warships arranged themselves in patterns that seemed random until I realized they were creating overlapping fields of fire, multiple redundancies, and fallback positions all at once. Humans planned for victory but prepared for disaster. It was surprisingly wise for a species we'd called barbaric. Admiral Kowalski's voice came over the general frequency. "All ships, this is actual. Operation Pest Control is go. Remember, fast, hard, overwhelming. We are not here to give them a fair fight. We are here to teach them that eating our friends is bad for their health. Fleet weapons free. All ships, engage." And then the galaxy learned what humans meant by total warfare. The 3rd Fleet opened fire. I need to describe what happened next, but I'm not sure my language has adequate words. The Thren vocabulary includes 47 terms for different types of philosophical discourse and exactly 3 words related to violence. Humans, I later learned, had over 200 terms just for different ways to destroy things. We needed their vocabulary. The human fleet didn't just attack. They orchestrated destruction like a symphony, each ship playing its part in a composition of controlled chaos. Energy weapons lit up the void in colors I'd never seen, colors that probably violated physics in interesting ways. Missiles streaked across space in swarms that rivaled the Velkari themselves, each one tracking targets with determination that seemed almost personal. Primary targets acquired. reported a calm human voice over the tactical channel. Firing solution locked. Deploying kinetic penetrators. I watched on the holographic display as metal rods, simple cylinders of dense material, launched from human ships at relativistic speeds. They weren't sophisticated, they weren't elegant, they were just mass multiplied by velocity, and when they hit swarm biostations, the resulting explosions could be seen across star systems. "That's barbaric," Counselor Mira whispered, her scales pale with shock. "That's effective," Captain Hayes corrected. She'd joined us on the observation deck, apparently to provide commentary. "Kinetic weapons are cheap, simple, and the swarm can't adapt to physics. They can evolve armor, but they can't evolve away from Newton's laws." The swarm, to their credit, responded quickly. Their ships began forming defensive clusters, their biological adaptive armor already shifting to counter the kinetic strikes. I saw swarm vessels splitting and reforming, evolving in real time like I'd witnessed so many times before. "They are adapting," I said needlessly. "Good," Hayes replied. "Watch what happens next." The human fleet shifted tactics without missing a beat. The kinetic bombardment stopped. Instead, waves of what Hayes called plasma torpedoes hammered into the swarm formations. The bioships that had just adapted to kinetic impacts were suddenly dealing with temperatures that matched the surface of stars. More swarm ships died. The survivors began evolving heat resistance. Then the humans switched to cold-based weapons, flash freezing entire sections of space. Then electromagnetic pulses. Then directed radiation beams. Then something Hayes called quantum destabilizers that made ships simply stop existing in a way that made my head hurt. "You are not giving them time to adapt," Praetor Veen said, understanding dawning in his voice. "Exactly," Hayes confirmed. "The swarm's strength is adaptation. They analyze a threat, modify their biology, overcome it. But that process takes time. Minutes, maybe hours. We are changing tactics every 30 seconds. They can't evolve fast enough to keep up." She smiled that predatory human smile. "We learned this fighting each other. Humans have been countering adaptive tactics since before we left our homeworld. We just usually call it evolution instead of the swarm." On the display, I watched 32 swarm concentrations simultaneously crumble under the human assault. Ships that had seemed unstoppable against our measured, logical warfare were being torn apart by enemies who refused to be logical. The humans weren't following any doctrine we understood. They were improvising, adapting faster than the swarm could, and doing it with a cheerful aggression that seemed almost casual. "Strike Group 7. You have got swarm reinforcements incoming. Vector Force 7 Mark II, announced a human coordinator. "Copy that, Actual." "Engaging with prejudice," came the reply, followed by what I was learning to recognize as human laughter. "Hey, these bugs are trying to ram us. Then let them get close and hit them with the close defense grid." "Roger that. This is going to be fun." Fun. They were calling this fun. Thousands of beings were dying every second. The void was filled with debris and radiation, and the humans thought it was entertaining. I didn't know whether to be horrified or impressed. Probably both. Again, "Admiral, Swarm Cluster 9 is attempting to flee," reported another voice. Kowalski's response was immediate. "Negative. No survivors. No escapees. Run them down. I want every swarm ship in this sector destroyed or captured. They came here to eat a civilization. They don't get to leave when the dinner fights back." "Captured?" I asked Hayes. "Why would you capture them?" "Intelligence. We need to understand their biology, their communication methods, their weaknesses."
"Dead enemies can't tell you anything."
"Live ones, properly motivated, can be very informative." She paused. "Don't worry, we won't torture them. We don't need to. Humans got very good at interrogation without physical coercion. Psychological pressure, environmental manipulation, good old-fashioned patience. We will figure out what makes the swarm tick." The battle, if you could call something so one-sided a battle, continued for 6 hours. 6 hours of relentless human aggression, of tactics shifting faster than I could track, of weapons I didn't know existed being deployed with casual efficiency. The swarm tried everything. They attempted to retreat and were hunted down. They tried to adapt and were hit with new weapons before they could complete the process. They even tried to kamikaze into human ships, throwing themselves at the Third Fleet in desperation. The humans had defenses for that too. Point defense systems that could track and destroy thousands of targets per second, energy barriers that materialized on demand, And in one memorable case, a tractor beam that caught a swarm ship and threw it back into its own fleet like some kind of cosmic fastball. Strike Group 3. Nice pitching. Kowalski commented dryly. Thanks, Actual. Always wanted to play in the big leagues. More human laughter. I was developing a theory that humans used humor to process stress. Either that or they genuinely found warfare entertaining. Given what I'd learned about their species, both could be true. When the firing finally stopped, all 32 swarm concentrations had been neutralized. Not defeated. Not pushed back. Neutralized. Erased from existence with the kind of thoroughness that spoke to long practice. Casualty report, Kowalski ordered. 14 ships with minor damage, 3 with moderate damage, 0 destroyed. Personnel casualties are 11 wounded, 0 fatalities. Swarm casualties are estimated at 100%. Perfect. The humans had achieved a perfect victory. They'd destroyed an enemy that had been obliterating our civilization for 3 years, and they'd done it in 6 hours without losing a single ship. The mathematical improbability made my head spin. Good work, people, Kowalski said. Begin recovery operations. Get our wounded to medical, salvage teams. See what you can learn from the wreckage. Science teams. I want those captured swarm specimens in containment within the hour. And somebody get me an update on the main swarm fleet heading for Thren space. Sir, they have altered course, reported a tactical officer. They are moving to intercept us. Excellent. Saves us the trouble of hunting them down. How long until contact? 36 hours at current speed. Good. That gives us time to reload, repair, and prepare a proper welcome. Kowalski switched his attention to our council channel. Counselors. Phase 1 is complete. We have eliminated their forward bases and cut their supply lines. Now we deal with the main fleet. I suggest you continue evacuating civilians. This next fight is going to be bigger. Praetor Vin's voice was shaky. Admiral, that was incredible. We have been fighting the swarm for 3 years and never achieved anything close to what you just accomplished. Counselor, you were trying to fight a clean war. There's no such thing. War is ugly, brutal, and unfair. The side that accepts that usually wins. Kowalski's expression softened slightly. But I understand. You built a civilization on higher ideals. That's admirable. It's just not practical when someone's trying to eat you. That's what you have got us for now. We will do the ugly work so you can keep being civilized. The transmission ended, leaving the council in stunned silence. They are good, Ambassador Treadle said finally. Terrifyingly good. They are necessary. Vin corrected. And we are fortunate they are on our side. He turned to me. Kesix, I want you to remain our liaison with the humans. Learn everything you can about how they fight, how they think. When this is over, we will need to understand them if we are going to share a galaxy. I accepted the assignment with mixed feelings. Spending more time around humans meant exposure to their casual violence, their disturbing sense of humor, and their complete disregard for conventional thinking. It also meant learning from the most effective warriors the galaxy had ever seen. Over the next 30 hours, I shadowed Captain Hayes as she coordinated with the Third Fleet. I watched human efficiency in action as damaged ships were repaired, weapons were reloaded, and tactical plans were refined based on data from the first engagement. The humans treated warfare like a science, constantly testing, learning, improving. I also learned about human culture. Hayes explained that Earth had 7 continents, dozens of major nations, and hundreds of distinct cultures. Humans fought each other constantly throughout their history, not from hatred, but from simple disagreement about how to organize society. Every war taught them something new. Every conflict refined their tactics. We are a young species, Hayes told me as we reviewed tactical displays. Most of you guys had interstellar civilizations when we were still figuring out agriculture. But we spent that time learning the one thing we are really good at, fighting. Not because we wanted to, because we had to. Earth is a nightmare world, Kesix. Predators everywhere, natural disasters, diseases, food scarcity, everything trying to kill us. So we learned to kill back, and we got very, very good at it. But you are capable of more than violence, I protested. Your art, your music, your literature, all created between wars, she said with a shrug. Humans thrive in adversity. We build beautiful things in peacetime and then defend them ferociously when threatened. It's who we are. The galaxy thinks we are barbarians because we are good at war. They forget we are also good at everything else. We just don't get to show it as often because people keep needing us to solve their violence problems.
I thought about that.
The galaxy had typecast humanity based on their most visible trait. We'd never looked deeper, never considered that a species good at destruction might also be good at creation. We'd been prejudiced. The Council's required apology was going to be earned, not just necessary. "Contact in 10 minutes, announced a tactical officer. "Swarm main fleet is entering engagement range." Hayes stood. "Time to go to work. You staying for the show?" "I wouldn't miss it," I said, surprising myself. We returned to the observation deck where the Council had gathered again. This time, though, the atmosphere was different. Instead of desperate hope, there was cautious optimism. We'd seen what the humans could do. Now we'd see if they could do it again on a larger scale. The Swarm main fleet was massive. 15,000 bioships, each one a masterwork of organic engineering and adapted evolution. They'd been consuming star systems for years, learning from every encounter, becoming more deadly with each battle. This was the force that had destroyed our fleets, obliterated our colonies, and pushed our civilization to the brink of extinction. The humans looked at it and saw a target practice. "All ships, weapons free," Kowalski ordered. "Let's show them why humans don't back down from a fight." The Third Fleet opened with a maneuver I hadn't seen before. Half the ships accelerated straight toward the swarm while the other half held back. It looked like a mistake, like the fleet was splitting its strength. Then I understood. The forward ships weren't attacking. They were bait. The swarm, programmed to consume and adapt, surged forward to meet the advancing human ships. They swarmed around them like antibodies attacking an infection, surrounding the human vessels from all sides. Then the second half of the Third Fleet opened fire, and I understood what Captain Hayes had meant about humans liking unfair fights. The bait ships had drawn the swarm into a killing field, and now every human weapon in the fleet had clear shots at tightly packed targets. The void erupted in violence. But this time, the swarm was ready. They'd been analyzing human tactics from the first battle. Their ships began executing complex evasive patterns, their formations breaking apart to reduce concentrated fire effectiveness. I saw swarm vessels deploying countermeasures, adapting their armor in real time, even returning fire with weapons that seemed designed specifically to counter human shields. They'd learned, just like they always did. "They are adapting faster than expected," Hayes observed. "Smart bugs." "Is that a problem?" Counselor Nex asked nervously. "Nope, just means we get to use Plan B." "What's Plan B?" Hayes grinned. "Chaos." At her signal, the human fleet abandoned formation entirely. Ships scattered in what looked like complete disorder, each vessel acting independently. It was the opposite of the coordinated assault I'd witnessed before. It looked like panic. It wasn't. Each human ship was now executing its own tactical plan, engaging targets of opportunity with whatever weapons seemed appropriate. There was no pattern for the swarm to adapt to because there was no pattern. Just 23,000 warships all making individual decisions based on training, instinct, and apparently personal preference. "Strike Group 12, I have got a cluster of bioships trying to flank the Indomitable. Permission to intercept." "Granted, show them what the Miller maneuver can do." "With pleasure." "Hey Swarm, catch me if you can." I watched as a single human destroyer led a dozen swarm ships on what looked like a chase before suddenly reversing thrust and accelerating backward while firing forward. The pursuing swarm vessels, unable to match the maneuver, flew directly into the weapon's fire. Half of them were destroyed before they could react. Elsewhere, a human cruiser was using its tractor beams to throw asteroids at swarm concentrations. Another was deploying mines that appeared to be made of compressed dark matter. A carrier was launching fighter craft piloted by humans who apparently thought flying through combat zones at suicidal speeds constituted entertainment. And through it all, the swarm was losing. They couldn't adapt to chaos because chaos has no rules. They couldn't predict human tactics because humans kept inventing new ones. Every time a swarm ship developed a defense, the attacking human would switch weapons or try something completely different. I watched a human corvette defeat a bioship 3 times its size by ramming it repeatedly with reinforced prow armor, an absurd tactic that worked purely through audacity. "This is insane," Mira said, watching the battle with wide eyes. "This is human," Hayes corrected. "We excel at improvisation. The swarm thinks warfare is a puzzle with optimal solutions. We know it's actually creative expression with explosions. The battle raged for 12 hours. 12 hours of humans inventing new ways to destroy bioships, of tactics that ranged from brilliant to absurd, of warfare conducted with both precision technology and what I can only describe as aggressive creativity. The swarm fought back desperately, evolving and adapting as fast as they could, but they were always one step behind human innovation. Finally, inevitably, the swarm fleet broke. It wasn't a gradual retreat. It was a sudden collective decision by surviving swarm vessels to flee. They scattered in all, abandoning formation, abandoning coordination, just trying to escape the human fleet that had shattered their forces. "Pursuit?" asked a tactical officer. Kowalski was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that surprised me. "Negative. Let them run. Track their trajectories, but don't pursue." "Sir? Those ships are going to carry a message back to whatever passes for swarm leadership. The message is simple. Humans protect their allies. Attack our friends again and we won't stop at defeating you. We will erase you." He paused. "Besides, we have got their attention now. If they are smart, they will leave this sector entirely. If they are not smart, we will be ready when they come back." The Third Fleet regrouped, battered but victorious. Final casualty reports showed 42 ships damaged, 7 destroyed, and 371 human lives lost. Against a force that had been unstoppable for 3 years, these were negligible losses. Against the swarm's near-total destruction, it was practically a miracle. But I noticed something in how the humans treated their casualties. There was no celebration, no cheering. They'd won, but they'd paid a price, and they honored that. Memorial services were held. Names were read aloud, families were notified. The humans might be efficient killers, but they mourned their dead with genuine grief. "War is hell," Hayes told me quietly as we watched a memorial service on the Indomitable. "We are good at it, but that doesn't mean we enjoy it. Every name on that list represents someone who won't go home, someone who died protecting others. We remember them, we honor them, and we make damn sure their sacrifice meant something." The swarm retreated from Thren space. Monitoring stations tracked them leaving the sector entirely, heading for deep space where perhaps they'd find easier prey. Or perhaps they'd remember the lesson the humans taught them and stick to uninhabited systems. Either way, the threat was over. The Council convened for the formal apology 2 weeks later. It was broadcast across all Thren worlds, transmitted to every species in the galactic community. Thren stood before cameras and audiences numbering in the billions and spoke words that must have hurt his pride. "For 70 years, we of the galactic community have treated humanity with prejudice and disdain. We called them barbarians. We mocked their culture. We excluded them from our councils and considered them lesser beings. We were wrong." He paused, letting that sink in. "The humans came to our aid when we needed them most. They fought our battle, saved our civilization, and asked for nothing but respect in return. They have earned that respect 1,000 times over. On behalf of the Council of 7 Reaches, soon to be 8, I apologize to humanity for our prejudice and welcome them as full partners in the galactic community." The applause from the assembled Thren was genuine. We'd seen what humans could do. We'd learned what they were capable of. Fear had given way to respect, and respect was building towards something that might become friendship. Admiral Kowalski accepted the apology with grace. I hadn't expected from a warrior. "We don't hold grudges," he said simply. "Humans have been the outsiders before in our own history. We know what it's like to be judged unfairly. What matters is you gave us a chance to prove ourselves, and you are willing to learn from what happened. That's all we ask." "Well, that and the technology sharing you promised. We are really excited about your faster-than-light mathematics." There was laughter at that. Human laughter mixed with Thren sounds of amusement. Different species, finding common ground. Later, in a private moment, Captain Hayes found me reviewing reports. "So, Kesix, what did you learn?" "That we were fools," I said honestly. "We built our civilization on the premise that reason and logic would solve everything. But we forgot that the universe doesn't care about our premises. Sometimes you need warriors. Sometimes you need people willing to do the ugly work. Sometimes you need humans. And what do you think of us now?" I considered the question carefully. "I think you are still barbarians," I said, and before she could react I continued, "But I think that's not an insult. It's a description. You are barbarians in the original sense of the word. Outsiders who didn't fit our civilized mold. But civilization, I have learned, is fragile. It needs protecting. And sometimes the best protectors are the ones who understand that being civilized is a luxury afforded by those willing to be brutal when necessary. Hayes smiled. That's the nicest thing a Thren has ever said to us. Don't let it go to your head. You are still terrible at philosophy. We will stick to our strengths, she agreed. You build beautiful civilizations. We will make sure they stay standing. The Thren homeworld held a celebration 3 months later, streets filled with our people marking the end of the swarm threat and the beginning of a new era. Human ships patrolled our skies, not as conquerors but as defenders. The Third Fleet had stayed, at our request, to help rebuild our defense forces and train our people in modern warfare. I stood on a balcony watching the festivities with Captain Hayes beside me. You know what the funny thing is? I said. Before all this, we thought we were the pinnacle of galactic achievement. Thousands of years of culture, philosophy, art, and it took barbarians to save us. Hey, we have got culture too, Hayes protested mildly. We just express it differently. You write poems about the beauty of existence. We write songs about punching existence in the face when it gets too cocky. She grinned. Different approaches, same goal. Finding meaning in the universe. Yours involves more explosions. Everything's better with explosions. That's practically human philosophy right there. I laughed. A sound I'd been making more often lately. Humans had that effect. Their casual approach to serious topics. Their refusal to take themselves too seriously even while accomplishing impossible things. It was infectious. So what happens now? I asked. Now, we help you rebuild. We share technology. You teach us your sciences, we teach you how to fight. In a few years, the Thren will be a power in their own right again. Hayes looked out at the celebrating crowds, and then, if we are very lucky, other species will see what happened here and realize humans aren't the enemy. We are just different, and different can be valuable. The galaxy is going to change.
It already has. You have got humans in the galactic community now. Full members, equal partners. We are going to bring our perspective to everything. Trade agreements negotiated with actual backbone. Defense pacts with teeth. Diplomatic solutions backed by the understanding that if talking doesn't work, we have other options. She paused. But also human art, music, literature, science. We are not just warriors, Kesix. We are a complete package. The galaxy just needs to give us a chance to show it.
From the streets below came a sound that made Hayes perk up. Human music, played by Thren musicians attempting to master instruments designed for different physiology. It was rough, imperfect, but enthusiastic. A cultural exchange in action. They are playing Earth jazz, Hayes said with delight. Badly, but they are trying. That's beautiful. We are trying to understand you, I said. It seems only fair after you saved us. We didn't save you alone, your people fought too. You held the line until we arrived. You trusted us despite your prejudices. That took courage. She clapped me on the shoulder, that human gesture of camaraderie I'd learned to accept. We may have different strength, but together we are stronger than either species alone. That's the real lesson here. I thought about the battles I'd witnessed. The human chaos matched with Thren logic. The aggressive tactics supported by our analysis and intelligence. The combination had been devastating to our enemies and protective of our people. Partnership, I said. Partnership. Hayes agreed. The barbarians and the philosophers, working together. I'd say that sounds like the start of a bad joke, but actually, it sounds like the start of something great. In the sky above, human warships and Thren science vessels flew in formation, a sight that would have been unthinkable months ago. Different designs, different purposes, but unified in common cause. The galaxy had called humans barbaric. They'd mocked our saviors, dismissed our protectors, and judged without understanding. They'd learned their mistake the hard way, watching as those same barbarians accomplished what civilized warfare could not. But here's what I'd learned, what I hoped the galaxy would learn. Barbarism and civilization aren't opposites. They are partners. You need both. The dreamers and the fighters, the philosophers and the warriors, the species who build beautiful things and the species who defend them. Humanity was barbaric. They were also brave, loyal, creative, and far more complex than we'd given them credit for. They saved our civilization not because they were simple-minded brutes, but because they understood something we'd forgotten. Sometimes survival requires you to set aside philosophy and pick up weapons. Sometimes protecting what you love means getting your hands dirty. Sometimes the most civilized thing you can do is embrace necessary barbarism. The swarm had wanted to consume us. The humans taught them why that was a terrible idea. In doing so, they taught us something more valuable than military tactics. They taught us that strength and wisdom aren't contradictory, that being good at warfare doesn't make you bad at everything else, that judging a species by one trait blinds you to their full potential. They called him Barbaric, Admiral Kowalski, Captain Hayes, every human in the Third Fleet. The galaxy labeled them and dismissed them and underestimated them. Then they saved our civilization and proved that sometimes, just sometimes, the barbarians are exactly what civilization needs to survive. I watched the celebration continue into the night, humans and Thren mingling in the streets, sharing stories and drinks and laughter. Different species, finding common ground. Different perspectives creating something new. The galaxy had changed. We had changed. And as I stood there beside Captain Hayes watching our peoples come together, I realized something profound. We hadn't just been saved by barbarians, we'd been saved by friends. And that made all the difference.